So good evening, we're super happy to see you. I don't have a microphone for you in the room, so I'm going to do my best to talk very loudly. I'm going to let Tamara introduce Meritis, who's hosting us tonight, and then I will introduce the session.
Bonjour, bienvenue chez Meritis. Donc moi je me présente, je suis Tamara, je travaille sur la partie recrutement de Meritis et ce soir je serai accompagnée de Thomas qui est également dans la salle et qui travaille sur la partie commerciale. Donc pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas Meritis, on est une société de conseil spécialisée en système d'information pour la finance et pour l'industrie. Chez Meritis vous allez retrouver plein de passionnés et notamment sur des sujets qui vont vous parler, sur le machine learning, sur la data science. On a mis en place plein d'initiatives sur ces sujets. Vous pouvez retrouver en ligne un blog avec une centaine d'articles qui vont parler justement de ces problématiques qui sont rédigés par nos consultants eux-mêmes. Donc je vous invite à aller les consulter. On a aussi une communauté d'expertise sur l'intelligence artificielle, un laboratoire d'innovation spécialisé en NLP, donc différents sujets qui sont tous extrêmement intéressants. On recrute des passionnés comme vous, j'en suis certaine. Donc si vous avez besoin d'informations sur Meritis, sur nos opportunités ou sur des questions de manière plus générale, n'hésitez pas à venir après le Meetup nous voir, Thomas et moi, on répondra à vos questions avec plaisir. Voilà, merci encore d'être là. Et je vous souhaite un très bon meet-up.
Okay, so let's start. As usual, we're super happy to be here. And I wanted to thank you on behalf of the team because each session you are more and more to come and there's new faces coming and we're very happy. And we have a good news. We almost reached 2,200 members, and it makes us the third biggest WiMLDS meetup in the world. So we can be proud. Paris is very active in machine learning, and that's something that we should be celebrating. And just for you to know, the WiMLDS globally, it's 25,000 people. And I brought from New York some WiMLDS stickers. So if you want one to pimp your computer, you can come and see Chiara, Chloe, Marina, Natalie, or myself, and we will give you one. We have only 35, so I'm sorry, there will be people disappointed. One thing we wanted to stress is that WiMLDS is super into diversity. And if your company, your lab, your school is looking to hire a diverse workforce, you can go on the WiMLDS website and it's a free access for you to share your job position. So just one note, do it when your company is open to English speakers and able to relocate people to France, otherwise it doesn't make sense. And if you have only position in Paris, in France in general, reach out to us, the Paris team, and we will share it to our network. We opened, the WiMLDS global team, an Instagram account. Please follow it. It's super funny because you can see what the other meetups are doing. Everyone has its own identity, so if you are on Instagram, follow us. On the same note, I wanted to advise you to read a very good article about the founder of WiMLDS. Her name is Erin Liddell. She's a chief machine learning scientist at H2O. And in this interview, she's explaining what made her create WiMLDS, and she's talking about role models as well, and I think it's super important. You can find it on the Medium blog of AI for All. Something we want you to take part to, we created an hashtag, Friday WiMLDS paper. It's inspired by Vendredi Lecture, for those of you who are on Twitter. Basically, we would like to highlight every women writing papers in machine learning and data science. So it's not just our job. If you read a kick-ass paper and that you think it's worth reading, please use the hashtag. And if sometimes you don't know what to read, use the hashtag and go and look at what we shared. Something else. We have been in touch with a journalist from the Data Analytics Post, and she's really looking forward to highlighting data scientists, and she's lacking female scientists, engineers to feature. So ladies in the room, if you're okay to give visibility to your work, to your background, to become yourself a role model, and I think every single one of us is a role model, please come to us and we will put you in touch. If you're working in a company, I'm sure your company will be very happy to get some free publicity. And very important, it's read mostly by students. And for us, it's very important because, you know, we work more with people in the field, but targeting students, it's super important as well. There's a Jupyter workshop coming in June. A little bit like scikit-learn. When it's open source, it's super good, it's super active, but there's not enough women attending and daring to push code on open source tools. So if you're free from the 3rd to the 6th of June, I'm telling you, go. Otherwise, later in June as well, Polytechnique is organizing the 3rd Data Science Summer School. So the registrations are not open yet, but it's going to be next week. And you can have a look because the speakers are already highlighted, and it seems that it's going to be an amazing edition. Something we also wanted to share, there's a data challenge which has been released last week, mixing sport data and sport performance. It's super important because it's a partnership between Polytechnique and PSG. I don't need to put an English accent. PSG, and the winner can get a full grant for a PhD position or a postdoc position. So spread the word. If you are interested yourself, go on. You can use whatever you want in terms of tool. It can be R, it can be Python. Be creative. And good news, we have a new partnership with the Data X Day conference organized by Xebia. So you have a 20% discount with this promo code. We will share it on the Medium post later on. Basically, I need to explain to you, it's very related to data science and data engineering. Okay? Our next meetup is going to be a kick-ass one, I'm sure. Maybe a little bit better than today, but let's see. We will receive a French mathematician, Nicole El-Karaoui, and an economist from Sciences Po and OFCE, Hélène Périvier. It will be in French this time, and it will be a little bit more open. We are going to have a conversation with them. They will talk about their background. And if you're free, if you didn't subscribe yet, please feel free to do so, because Nicole, I can tell you, she's going to be memorable. The next one, otherwise, will be on the 24th of April, and I'm very happy to announce that Giulia Bianchi will talk about AutoML. Manon Ansart, who's just in front of me, attending our first meetup tonight, will talk about machine learning for automatic diagnosis, and I love it, why your deep neural network might not work. And we will welcome a data journalist from Le Monde, Laura Motet. She will explain how she uses data to support articles. So tonight, we have a packed agenda. We're going to be efficient. We're going to start with Gül on human body extraction from images. Gül is currently completing a PhD position at INRIA within the Willow team. Then we'll have the pleasure of talking about data visualization with Anne-Marie from the Criteo AI Lab. And we are all going to get ourselves better at negotiating our salary with Natalie, who's our very own co-organizers. And then we're going to have fun. And tonight, if you want to share anything, here is our Twitter account, the hashtag, and Meritis account as well. And again, I would like to thank them for welcoming us. So, girl, come on stage. Okay. Je te le laisse avec plaisir.
Okay. Well, thank you for the invitation. It's my pleasure to talk at this event. So I'm going to be talking about some of the work I did for my PhD on human body analysis from image data. So let me give you very brief background on early days. So in order to predict the bodies from images, we have to represent them to the computers. And what people did in the very early days in the 1980s was quite ambitious. They were representing bodies as an ensemble of 3D geometric primitives such as cylinders and spheres. And then they realized this is quite difficult. And then they had a step back and then represented them as an ensemble of 2D structures such as this stick figure or pictorial structures. So this is Jeffrey Hinton's 1976 work, and then more later in 1980s and 2000. But what we have now as human body models are much more impressive and expressive. With the invention of Scape model in 2005, we have witnessed quite significant progress in human body modeling. And now the most popular, widely used method for body models is simple. I'm going to be talking about this model quite often in this talk. So a bit more in detail about this model. So they decompose the body shape into the pose, so the variation in the configuration of body limbs, such as arms and legs, and shape, which is defining how fat, how tall person is. So basically identity, but it can also change from one day to another. And this is a slide, credit goes to Alp, which slide that I really like, showing the history of the tasks that we are dealing with on human bodies. So given an input image, we were initially interested in whether there's a person in the image or not, so mostly classification. And then we went into more fine-grained tasks, such as putting a bounding box around the person, and more like segmenting all the pixels and into parts, and recently the localizing the body joints, so in 2D or 3D. And they also proposed a new task, which is dense pose, which is close to getting to full 3D surface. So in this talk, I will be presenting the approach we did for our recent ECCB 2018 work, which is a collaboration with Adobe Research and INRIA, where the goal is given an input image to predict the full surface of in 3D of a human body. So why we are interested in this? Has many applications. So you might want to buy some clothes online, you want to try it for yourself first at home, or you want to create a digital avatar of yourself, put it in a simulation environment, or for healthcare applications, you want to measure your body across time and give it to your doctor. But why this is a research topic? It's quite challenging without these complex and expensive scanners. This is the old scanner of Max Planck Institute in Germany. Now they have better ones, but basically what they had was like high number of cameras around the person, a lot of sensors, and then you can get a very detailed body shape. But we want to do this with machine learning, so we want to learn from data. But the problem is we lack data because it's quite difficult to acquire 3D ground truth for such images. So what we did for a long time was training on images such as these ones. Sorry about that, these are supposed to be videos normally. So these are people moving in a motion capture studio, a lot of markers put around their bodies and lots of cameras again. So this was one way to collect images with ground truth data. Or another approach I'm going to be mentioning in a second is getting the ground truth from synthetic images. So synthetic images are generated artificially using, for instance, graphics pipelines. So because you are the one creating it, you know exactly the ground truth, so it comes with free labels. So the problem with both approaches is that when you train on these data, you have a domain gap with the real images that you want to test on, so the generalization tends to be difficult. Another aspect of another consequence of a lack of data is the representation that was limiting us for a long time was mostly we were dealing with skeletons, so some sparse set of joints, but they're quite limited in some applications where you want a full surface. So final word on the challenges is the representation. Again, back to the representation problem. now we have the tools, the body models, to represent a more complex surface. But for instance, you want to stack a representation on the last layer of your neural network. We don't know which approach is the optimal in terms of efficiency or learning. So we have several alternatives I'm showing here. One is the parametric representation. So I mentioned the simple body model. It is parameterized by pose and shape parameters, which are quite low dimensional. So you have a vector of 82-dimensional vector, for instance, that represents a mesh of 6,000 vertices. You can have these 6,000 vertices locations to predict, so which makes it a bit more higher dimensional. Or you can have a voxel representation. So it's a quantized grid in 3D where you have voxels instead of pixels, so a 3D quantization. So in each case you have pros and cons. You have maybe more complexity in terms of computation, but it might be easier to learn. So I'm going to be focusing on the volumetric representation, the last one. And this architecture that we proposed, we call BodyNet because it's a lot of networks, like 4 networks attached to each other that are solving tasks related to bodies. So before I show the details of the architecture, let me just illustrate what it does. Given an image, it parses into body parts for each pixel, and then localizes the body joints in 2D, and then in 3D, and finally outputs the volume. So each network has dedicated task. And optionally, we can also fit with some post-processing optimization a body model. We can obtain the parameters of the body model by doing some optimization such that it fits best to our volume output. And we extend it also for more fine-grained 3D voxels in terms of 6 body parts. So just the summary of what this architecture does. It benefits from 3 main components. So the volumetric loss, which is classifying basically each voxel whether it's a person or not. So it has ones inside the body regions and zeros outside. So it's quite simple. The multiview projection loss, this is kind of constraining the output by collapsing the 3D volume into a 2D image and penalizing if it doesn't align with the segmentation. So this I will show in a second. That helps a lot, both qualitatively and quantitatively, the quality of the output. And in this, the green ones that I'm showing are intermediate supervisions on the easier tasks that are guiding the network towards the more difficult task. So 2D pose, 2D body part, and 3D pose estimation. So there are two data sets we experiment with for both training and testing. One is synthetic, one is real data. One has perfect ground truth, the other one has semi-automatic ground truth, so it's more noisy. So I will just show you the first data set a bit more in detail. This is some work we did in 2017 with collaboration with Max Planck Institute. So this is also supposed to be a video, but imagine this person, which is synthetic, moving nicely and dancing through time. So the way we created this data is mixing a bit of everything more randomly to create some diverse data set in large scale. So you sample a random body shape, a random motion capture, so you move the body with that motion, and you can produce random lighting, random camera position, and random clothing, which is pseudo-clothing in this case because it's some texture that is mapped on the mesh, on the naked body shape, and a random 2D background. So with this, we can just click a button and wait 1 day with a lot of CPUs, and you have like 6 million images. You train on this model with any ground truth you want, because it comes with, typically a data set comes with one modality of ground truth. With this way, you can have many things such as optical flow for the motion, or depth, or the mesh. So it has been used quite often since the release in 2017 by more than 1,000 downloads. So we are quite happy. And we used it ourselves for our research on this BodyNet architecture, because it allowed us to quantify how much each of these inputs bring. For instance, the first thing we checked was why do we need this cascaded architecture? Can't we just do it with RGB input and volume out? So here I'm showing the performance of the volumetric shape estimation. Higher is better. So we see that the combination of RGB 2D pose segmentation and 3D pose has the best performance compared to the individual ones alone. So it's quite intuitive, because when one task fails, so here the 2D pose fails in the second row, you can recover from this mistake by having maybe better segmentation. Of course, if it fails for every task, then it cannot recover, but it's on the average, it improves the performance. And coming to this reprojection loss, so this collapsing the output and constraining it to fit to the silhouette, this was the to me it was the main improvement with this work, because when you have the voxels during training, it learns that inside the body region it's mostly one, so it's quite confident that the middle of the body is a person. But it gets quite less confident on the extremities of the body, like the hands and the legs, which I'm showing here by the color map, which is 1 for blue and less for other colors. So in the end of the day, when you want a threshold, like typically with 0.5, because this is a binary classification, you lose sometimes this limbs, which are the most critical that carries the most critical information for body pose. And the last question was why volumetric representation? We compare with some alternative methods, like regressing directly the parameters or some other fitting optimization techniques. And the main advantage of such approach, this volumetric representation, is that it captures better some of the deformations, such as this one with some extreme shape deformation, because it's specially aligned with the voxel representation has a special resolution, and it's specially aligned with the image itself, which makes the problem a bit more linear compared to some parameter regression. So I won't go into detail why the other ones are predicting average shapes, because that's because of the representation of the body model, which assumes 0 vector as an average shape, and anything which is different than that is encoding the deformation from an average. And statistically, during training, you always have this mostly average shape. So the effect of this kind of extreme shapes gets lost. And the final advantage, which is quite important also, which is also a recent research, quite an open research problem, is to capture clothing. So we now have these body models that are only the anatomic body, so naked body shapes. But we also, for some applications, we want also to capture the cloth deformation. And volumetric representation is quite flexible, so you can, if you give the supervision, there's no reason why it cannot capture it. The problem is mostly the supervision. And remember the projection loss we have. If we give it the manual 2D segmentation, which we have for some data set, it learns to some extent adapt the boundaries, at least in the XY plane, to deform to follow the cloth boundaries. So this, in this case, has some shorts and some skirts, which when you rotate looks like shorts again, because in the Z dimension there is no supervision. So yeah, so this method was quite easy to plug in and get some results. We said, why not go beyond binary classification and have it for more fine-grained parts? So we divided the model into 6 parts here, and the background, so it becomes a 7-class classification. So for each voxel, you have from 1 to 7, and wait for a day of training. This was some kind of results we got qualitatively. Oh, this was supposed to be some videos, I'm sorry, but they're all on my webpage, these results videos, which are showing some 3D predictions on real images, which makes my presentation pretty fast. But it's okay, we have plenty of talks today. So to conclude this volumetric representation, we show this. It's a flexible alternative and also effective for learning. And their projection loss was the most critical to obtain this confident body surface. And the multitask training of relevant tasks, it improves, it guides from easier tasks to the more difficult tasks. Yes, so this concludes my talk. Thank you for your attention.
Anyone? Okay. So does anyone have any question? Don't be shy. No question? Yes.
Just the question about the, does it work?
I think it works.
Okay. So could you come back to the architecture?
Yes, sure.
Just one question. So you use the autoencoder on top of CNN, yes?
So this
At the beginning it's autoencoder, yes?
so it's not really an autoencoder. So autoencoder means like you put the loss on itself, but
Yeah.
this is a similar architecture in the sense that it has a spatial resolution at the beginning and a spatial resolution at the end. And so this is slightly different because it's some skip connections and some residual connections, but I refer to you the stacked hourglass networks where the architectures explain more detail.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
No more question? Okay.
Hey, thanks for the talk. I have a stupid question actually. You're learning on videos,
No, what I presented is all on single image.
and so you have frames from videos in your data, or do you have
And synthetic, I have
very
frames.
distinct single images?
On synthetic, I have videos which I haven't explored for this work, but on real, I don't have
Okay.
videos with labels.
So you split the videos in frames,
Just
and you
frame by frame,
okay.
yes.
Thanks.
It's feature work.
Okay.
Thanks for the talk. What are the next steps or the next things you are going to explore? So there are the 7 class classification.
Yes.
Something else?
Yes, something else. I wouldn't say it's a next step. Where's Jana? Okay, so this is something we did recently, very, very recently, to go from bodies and similar approach to hands to get the 3D surface of a hand, which is will depend. It has other challenges. Let's say I wouldn't say it's more complicated or less, but it has other challenges in the sense that it's holding objects. But it's the same in terms of lack of data. It's really difficult to get 3D annotation. So we did some synthetic data set to learn from for hands and to get the full surface of the hands. So this was the very next step. And now the more long-term step is using the 3D output for action recognition. So recognizing dynamic scenes. I don't know.
Thank you, Gül. Allez, last one.
Thanks for. Okay, so thanks for this talk. It's very interesting. I have some question about the architecture. In fact.
Yes.
So I think it's very smart to use like a lot of different loss in order to make your network converge. I was wondering if you consider using adversarial loss, like such as GANs or something like that.
What would that be for? To constrain the output, or
to constrain the output to something realistic? You know,
yes.
like you was
sure.
complaining before that you have some outputs sometimes
yes.
that are not
exactly.
consistent. So I was wondering if using adversarial loss would help in that case.
Yes, I cannot find that slide, but there is a 2018 work which is using, so we have distribution of body shapes learned from some data. They have, so and then they use this distribution. Every time they compute an output, they put a loss on adversarially they put a loss on so that it comes from this distribution, so it's making it realistic. So this is human mesh recovery 2018 work, which shows benefits of using such. But ideally we want this prior to be learned from data, so we want to get rid of such complications.
It's quite heavy to use
Yes.
this kind of architecture.
Yes, in 2019 you see that there, with some other constraints, people got rid of this adversarial loss as well.
And also another question, like what is the size of your picture?
2020.
No, no, I mean the size of your images.
The pixels.
Yeah.
256 to 56.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
Yeah. It's quite low.
Thank you, Gül.
Thank you.
Anne-Marie. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie completed a PhD back in 2010, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
She's a boss in terms of computer vision. She can code in C++, in Python. She's a rock star. And what I love about Anne-Marie is that she's dedicated in making her work as an engineer known. So at Criteo, every year they do classes with school kids where they teach them how to code. And Anne-Marie conceived an exercise in Python. So maybe, you know, if you're curious, you can talk about it. And now she's going to talk about data visualization.
Okay, thanks for the introduction, Caroline. So I'm Anne-Marie. I'm a machine learning researcher at Criteo, but today I'm not going to talk about my research. It's going to sound more like a rant, maybe. I wanted to talk about data viz because, well, I have a background in computer vision, so I like everything visual, probably. Actually, I had this idea. I started thinking about data visualization quite a while back, and at the very first Women in Machine Learning in Data Science meetup in Paris. Oh, that's the wrong version. I'm sorry. So you've got the title on the top. We had a roundtable on data visualization. And I volunteered to animate that roundtable, and we had a very interesting discussion. So afterwards, I bought one more book, this one, and I started reading a little bit, not the whole books, obviously, but I got reading again. And these books are interesting, but actually it was not that mind-blowing. What I learned was data visualization is difficult, sure, if you want to have very nice plots like when data journalists do. I can't wait for the next meetup. It's very hard to have very nice data visualizations. But there are also lots of very simple steps that everyone can take to make data easier to understand and to have better plots. And so I continued life, attending conferences, and I kept seeing plain tables. So imagine behind this this big table with lots of figures, each one with three decimal points and confidence intervals even. So when I see this now in conferences, I'm like, oh, it's ugly. Do they really want me to read all of this? Okay, maybe they just rush out, they're preparing their talk and copy-pasted the data from the paper. But do they really care about getting their message through? Why are they showing me this? And as my manager says, well, we should always have the most respectful interpretation. So I think, okay, maybe they just don't know that you can have nice plots with not that much work, and you can do much better than have this big pile of figures. So just for an example, when you think about graphs, think a picture is worth 1,000 words. You don't even need to read the labels here. You have the important ones in big. You know, it's dollars here somewhat, and Criteo, other companies, that's fine. That's 2016, by the way, but the message gets through. You don't need to explain each figure. Another example where data visualization is really important is when you're given a new data set and you want to see what's in there. So you compute summary statistics like the average, the standard deviation. Maybe you try to do a regression line and fit it. And there are people in the data viz community which are a bit too clever and found a way to fit any kind of shape of data to whatever kind of summary statistics you give them. Just to show you, you can't trust your summary statistics. You have to plot your data somehow if you want to detect patterns. That's the Datasaur dataset or something. Yeah, there's the link. You'll find it later. There's actually a full paper explaining how to generate more data like this. But the message is, if you want to understand your data, you need to plot it as well. So that's the main message, but more concretely, why is data viz so important, and what is it about really? Actually, visualizing thing has been used to help understanding since a long while, even before we had computers. Reading about James Clerk Maxwell, the physicist, I found out that even he was using data visualization to explain his work. He asked some people to build a model of the Saturn's rings when he wanted to explain how his model of it worked. He was actually the first to explain how Saturn's rings were made. He understood it, the first. And yeah, if Maxwell thought visualizing things is helpful, I think it might be helpful for me too. Another example that I like, which is more modern, is the work done by some people at Google, Fernanda Viegas and Martin Wattenberg, from the Google Pair group. And they've got out, for instance, this TensorFlow playground, which helps in understanding how neural networks work. So it's data visualization. It's not purely about your data, but it's, again, showing you when you push the things very far, how helpful it can be. If you want to explain neural networks to a beginner, that can help a lot. And there are other examples from this group. More generally, data visualization is about using more than one way to apprehend the world. Think about the Eiffel Tower. If you had only numbers about it, that wouldn't be the same. You can experience it in many different ways. You have 5 senses, why not use them all? But if you think about it, vision is probably one of the senses that we use the more. We use it to read, we use it to find a way. And even through visualizations, there are different ways of visualizing. So why visualization? It's about exploiting our super powerful human visual system. I don't know if you have ever heard of Gestalt theory. Who's heard of Gestalt theory? Quite a few. Okay, I'm not going to explain, just a little bit to tease you to go read Wikipedia. It's about some people have studied all the pre-computations that are made super fast in our brain, so that there are things that we see even before we can think about it. These are called pre-attentive attributes. It's like when you see things of the same color, you group them, and it's easy to see they go together. So let me give you an example. I'm going to ask you to count the trees on the screen in front of me. For people in the back, I hope you can actually read. Okay, ready? Go. How many trees did you see? 5? Who says 5? One person. Who says 6? Okay, maybe it was not long enough. Let me give you a little bit more time. Okay, who says 5? A little more. Who says 6? Who says 7? Okay, there's a mix. It's mostly 6, but there's a lot of 5 still. Can you count the trees now? Okay. How many trees? Who says 5? No one. Okay. So it was much easier, except it was maybe a bit too small for some people, but you get the idea. So the title mentioned Database 101. I'm going to get a little bit more into the practicals. How do you create a good database? As the previous slides may suggest, this is not something you can go on at random. You need to think through it, and there's a whole process. As any process, you should first think about why you want to visualize things. Most of the time, there are two main goals. It's either of exploration or explanation. So either you've got new data, you want to discover something about it, or you have discovered something already in your data and you want to explain to an audience. So you need to find the questions you want to answer in any case. Because if you want to explore your data, it's not just, okay, do I want to find patterns? Are there specific patterns I want to search for, etc. Once you have your question defined, this should guide you in choosing a visual, a kind of graph. And in that case, simple is better, always. Always start simple. Think about the function first, and then try to make it shinier or prettier or whatever. But the function is more important. I'm going to explain a little bit more about it in the next slides. Then once you have your first iteration, you can iterate and find the right focus. So use these pre-attentive attributes to make the message clearer, even for you when you're exploring your data. And finally, make sure you are actually answering the question you had at the beginning, because when you're exploring data, it's so easy to get lost, like Wikipedia. And find, if you have an answer to your question, normally you should be able to tell a story about your data. In all the parts of this process, there are best practices which you should be able to follow. I'm just giving a few of them here. I can't possibly go through all the data best practices. I'm going to give you a bunch of references at the end of the talk, so it will be like big slides with lots of links. But ones which I think are important are accessibility. Think about colorblind people. It's 8% of the male population. think about people who can't read from afar. Hopefully it's big enough for the back of the room, but yeah, it's as simple as making your police bigger sometimes. So there are many rule of thumbs as well to help you do the right thing. Two messages which I think are important is you shouldn't just use the defaults and be happy with it. Just take a little bit of time, just take care about it, change the defaults. So take control of what you're doing. And finally, as a scientist, be truthful. Don't cut your axes, truncate, change data. It's like not good. And to show that, you can always give the sources of the data. So simple visuals, here they are, most of them. So most of the time you can just use one of these. Tables may be helpful sometimes when you know people in the audience are going to look for specific figures, but otherwise bar charts, lines, scatter plots go a long way. Don't use pie charts unless you have really good reasons to do so. They're deceptive, like you think this one is bigger than this one. It's wrong. So yeah, they're lying. These are junk charts. Don't use them. Remember the pre-attentive attributes. They can help you in focusing on the right thing. So there are many of them. I'm not going to detail all of them, but think that size should be relative to what is most important. And color allows you to highlight what you think is important as well. Just use them wisely. So Edward Tufte is very well known as well for his writings on database. He's an artist as well. He say about removing clutter. He says this. So maximize the data ink ratio. Within reason, you still need to be to have something in your graph. And forgo chart junk included moire vibration. If you have never heard of moire, I'm going to show you in a slide next what that is. I saw that in a fairly recent paper and my eyes just hurt. And when you change the scale of the PDF, then the gold goes gray and it blinks and it's, please don't. And finally, don't let your design choices be happenstance. They should be the results of explicit decisions. You're all smart people. You shouldn't just do random stuff. You can think about what you're showing if you respect your audience. If you want your message to go through and not have people blinking, eyes, tearing. So yeah, be respectful of your audience and just think about what you're doing. So maybe for the practical part, I don't know how much time I have left. I didn't count. Actually, the defaults in Matplotlib are much better now than 3 years ago. They did some work about it, in getting inspiration from Tableau. ggplot in R is really good. So you can go with their defaults. You can also improve upon them. There's one library which I like personally, which is Seaborn. There's lots of interesting tools in them. And it's very easy to change the defaults for them. So if you want to be colorblind friendly, just use colorblind color palette. It's as easy as this. So yeah, just a little bit of tips. And to conclude, okay, it should be clear by now. Please don't show me big tables. If you have less than 5 figures, maybe that's okay. But you'll have to write them too small in any case at some point. So yeah, just plots are so easier to understand. Know that there's lots to learn about database. You could read books and other books. You probably don't have to, but you should care. You should at least read a little bit about it to know what's existing. Know that it's not only about having nice plots, nice graphics. It's really about getting your message through, understanding your data better. It's about doing good science, actually. And yeah, no, there's a wealth of resources. There's research in data visualization if you want to get into it. I talked about the Google groups, but there are others. And yeah, here are the lists of lists. So books, there are research papers. Actually, there are statisticians showing that even in papers you can get nice graphs in the same space as with the tables. And yeah, blogs with the good and bad examples, people thinking it through. You can practice with Makeover Monday if you're not as lazy as I am. And if you want to talk about it more, you can always react on the WiMLDS Slack channel. So yeah, it will be clickable on PDF, I suppose. So yeah, thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I'm sure you have questions. Anyone? At least you have beautiful smiles while looking at me. No? Okay, so we're going to start the workshop. And if you ask questions to Anne-Marie during the cocktail, I will be mad.
I won't.
Does it work? Okay.
Before Natalie starts, I would like to tell you a few things about Natalie. She's a oh yes, I should go to the frame.
Right, please.
Thank you. So Natalie got a PhD in Greek and in literature. She lived
Wrong.
Oh. Okay, so you're going to see what is the truth and what is false, and she's going to correct. So she lived in Tokyo.
True.
Okay, she speaks several languages, and I was trying to count today. I thought it was like 6 or 7, and she told me
10.
10. What I like about Natalie is that she's super into fighting for women to be out there. She's really into diversity, but for real. And tonight she wanted to do a workshop dedicated to salary negotiation, and you are all going to take part to it. So don't be shy, please. If you do it with her, then you will be better at it.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Do you hear me everywhere? Great. So welcome to the salary negotiation workshop. It's going to be practical. We are going to do some activities together. Some of those activities will be uncomfortable, stupid, or perhaps horrible. So if you're afraid, maybe it's time to leave now. But, you know, negotiation is just like data science. You learn it by doing. So without further ado, let's get started. And let's get started with a quick question. Who here negotiated their first salary? Please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Congratulations. Majority of those raised hands are men. Congratulations. For the rest, welcome to the club. I'm a business developer, and I was negotiating contracts and sponsorship and agreements for my employer before it occurred to me I should negotiate my own salary. And so the result of our survey actually match the global data. Only 7% of women negotiate their first salaries, whereas 57% of men do. This gap narrows later in life, but at every age, every stage, every type of negotiation, there are always 15% fewer women than men negotiating for the same thing. So what are the outcomes of this disparity? The last three items are French data. 18%, it's data for freelancers who set their own fees. So women, for the same type of job, the same type of task, set themselves their fees 18% fewer. The data is very fresh. It's from Malt, which is a freelancing platform, published last week. 24%, it's the average gender pay gap in France, according to INSEE, which means for the same type of job, in same type of geography, in the same type of skill set, women on average are paid 24% less. And the last number, it's a French economical magazine called Alternative Économique. They calculated that during our lifetime, this difference between what men are earning and what women are earning is about 300,000 K on average. And for people who are better educated like us, the difference is 480,000 K. It's almost half a million that we are leaving on the table by not negotiating. So why women don't negotiate? Well, there are three main concerns that we often hear. Number one, what if they think I'm greedy, I'm arrogant, I'm bad, what if they penalize me? What if they punish me by for negotiating? So there are several answers to this question. The first one, actually, negotiation is expected. It's a default option. And negotiation skills today, like communication skills or networking skills, are expected from every professional. To be entirely frank with you, there is some evidence, and I'm very cautious about it, there is some evidence that women, when they ask, can be viewed as negatively. But I'm going to return to this issue at the very end of our workshop. But for the time being, let's just say, no, they actually expect you to negotiate. Okay. So the second concern that women quite often say, well, I'm not doing it for the money. Obviously, we work for a variety of reasons, but still think how many things you can do if you had a bit more money. And so I listed things that would make sense for me, like buying a helicopter and traveling to Mount Fuji. But now I want to for you to do the first activity. You will have a sort of individual brainstorming, Caroline, not this one, individual brainstorming in your own head. Find at least 9 reasons why you, personally you, should negotiate your salary. Okay? Ready, steady, go. 1 minute. Individually for yourself, thinking. As many as you can, but at least 9. Ten seconds left. Okay, who has 9? 10? 20? 15? More than 15? Is the highest number 10? Give it, so someone has 10 reasons? So whoever has 10 reasons, please come to me and get the sticker. Right, so I think I would emphasize only one thing on this list, is that it's important to have safety cushion because shit happens, and it's important for you, particularly for women, to be able to walk away from a toxic work environment or from a toxic relationship. And if money is an issue, it can be quite difficult. Okay, let's move to the last concern. Last concern, sorry, that women quite often mention. Well, I don't know how to negotiate. You know what? I have excellent news for you. Negotiation can be learned. Negotiation is not magic. It's not like some supernatural talent that some people have and others don't. It's also not a zero-sum game. It's not confrontation. You do not need to be salesy. You do not need to be pushy. You do not need to be aggressive. In fact, if you are analytical, if you're shy, if you're a good listener, it's excellent. You will negotiate much better if you respect your own personality and find your own style. So negotiation is a skill, and we are going to learn it right now. And I will explain to you the 3 principles of any negotiation, and obviously of the salary negotiation. Practice, prepare, practice, and politely persevere. So easy to remember. 3 principles: prepare, practice, and politely persevere. Let's start with preparation. The step number 1, you should know your market value. What does it mean? You should know how much other people in your geography, with your level of experience, with your skills, are making. How do you find this information? Well, obviously there are obvious sources of information like Glassdoor, AngelList, or Welcome to the Jungle, or LinkedIn, or job boards. But you can go beyond. In the US, there's an excellent project for women's salaries called the Salary Project. And I will immediately say that all the links will be shared on the Medium page, and I will give you access to my list of resources. So no need to copy right now. So the Salary Project in the US, it gives a range of salaries for all kind of jobs, and it's fascinating to watch how the same job is paid completely different amounts in a similar geography. So it's very interesting. For France, there is something similar by people behind the company called Remotive.io. They shared on an Excel sheet real salaries anonymously, real salaries by real people working in real French startups. And I will also give you a link to this resource, and don't forget to enter the data. Also, particularly for women, ask your male colleagues how much they're making. Just be frank about it. And one last tip. You know, now many companies very much claim publicly that they're supporting women and diversity people. And so play the transparency card with your human resources, so your manager, to say, you know, your company is supporting women. I would like to know whether I am paid the same as my male counterparts. And keep silent. There are real stories when women ask this question, and their boss offered them rattrapage, so they offered them to compensate for several years because the percentage was quite large. So I mentioned these real startup salaries in France, and I looked at the data for data scientists, and there was not much. So today we're going to do something for the community. Caring is sharing. So I'm going to issue you post-it notes to which you're going to enter anonymously. No one is, apart from me, no one is going to see it. And I cannot recognize you by handwriting. Anonymously, 3 types of information. A, your job title. data scientist, engineering professor, marketing assistant, PhD student, whatever is your job title. Number 2, your age. And number 3, your annual brut salary. So Marie and Caroline, they're sharing the post-its. And so if you don't have pencils, there are also pencils circulating. And then there is a bag circulating. And we're going to collect all the data. I will analyze it. And then we'll do nice data visualization with Anne-Marie. So let's do this activity for a minute and a half. Yeah? So I repeat, three types of information. Job title, age, annual, gross salary. Data science, we? No, just do annual gross salary, because quite often for data scientists, and then the girls is going, yes? Yes? What do you mean? About? Sure, right? Your job title is intern, but you're paid something. I hope. And then there's a bag circulating. We can put all the information in that big bag and. Okay, let's move on. While you are collecting all the data, thank you so much for playing the game. So we are going to, as I said, we are going to visualize the results and we'll publish a survey on Medium. So it would be interesting also for the community to understand what real people are making. But we are moving to the second part of preparation. So you know your value. You also should know your situation. What does it mean? How is salary raised handled at your work? When is a good time to ask? Who is your main interlocutor? Is your boss who decides, or is it human resources? Or is it his boss? So you really need to figure out what's going on. When is a good time to ask? Is it beginning of the year? Is it beginning of financial year? Is it anniversary of your joining? Perhaps it's the end of very important project when you really gave your best. You was sort of on a phone with the marketing team in California late at night. Well, after that project, perhaps it's a good idea to think maybe it's a good time to ask for a raise. And one piece of advice that a senior engineer once gave me, and I find it invaluable: keep a track of your most notable accomplishments with numbers, facts, and figures, if possible, on your home device. So January 2019, streamlined some feature, increased the conversion rate by 15%, stayed late with phone calls to Tokyo. When you're going to speak to your boss or human resources about salary, it's important to have very precise track of your accomplishments. And you will forget what you do if you don't keep this track. Okay? So we know our value. We know how salary raises are dealt with in our company. It's also a good idea to do some reading, particularly if you're like natural skill set more on the technical side, if you don't do sales or marketing for living. And the good news, there are plenty of entirely free online resources. And I will give you, I keep an updated list of resources that I use. I will give you access to this list. You can just go and dig and find whatever you like. The link will be on the Medium summary of this meetup. I also wrote an article just today on Medium, so you just can Google me and find the article, and all links are there. And so I particularly recommend She Negotiates. It's a blog about negotiation specifically for women. The Edge is extraordinary wealth of resources done by a guy who was negotiating international kidnapping for living and now is an expert. And and it's quite extraordinary what you can do using his tools. So there are plenty of resources. My advice is just commit to reading one article about negotiation per week, so you will learn quite a lot in 3 months. Okay, so now let's do a little quiz. You know, in France they really like that sort of testing people. How did they assimilated the material? So we have here 7 ways you can prepare for negotiation. So let's make sure that you know which of them are right and which of them are not. Right? Okay, well, let's make sure that we know that do some reading on the topic is important. Keeping a track of your achievements is very important. Researching your market value. I wouldn't sort of recommend very much miniskirts and low cuts, and I have a story to tell. Someone told me that once a woman was negotiating in a very low cut, and he told me, I looked straight in her eyes, and her low cut cost her company 1 million. So don't do it. Talk to people in your company, yes, and obviously praying to Schrödinger cat will not sort of get you far with negotiation. Okay, that was principle number 1, preparation. Now, let's move to the principle number 2, which is practice. Because we prepared, we think we are ready, but we have this voice going on in our heads. What if they will say no? It's not what if. They will say no. And in negotiations, they say, unless they say no, you don't have negotiation. So no is expected, and that's why you need to practice. You need to have your script and practice it. You can do simulation. For women, I really recommend doing simulation with your husband, brother, partner, male colleague, because probably your boss is going to be a man. You need to practice your arguments and counter arguments. So, for example, someone will say to you, well, no budget for your race. And you should say, well, please, let me understand. What do you mean by that? Who defines the budget? When the budget will be ready? How will make sure that my raise is included in the next budget? So do what they call open-ended questions. Questions to which you cannot say yes or no, but you need to elaborate. You need to understand what they mean there is no budget. And the rule of thumb for any negotiation, it's collaboration, it's conversation. You're trying to figure out something. It's not confrontation. And now the time has come to put our learnings to practice. I want you now all split into pairs of 2 people and choose among themselves who is going to be role A and who is going to be role B. Both roles are horrible. You can just pick at random, but by doing this practice, you will do much better in real life, okay? 30 seconds for finding your negotiating partner. And deciding who is A and who is B. Okay? Okay, everyone has a partner? Who is A? Excellent. And who is B? Excellent. Now I'm revealing the roles. Role A. You are a star data scientist, female, in a startup. You have been with the company for 3 years, and you're now the most senior person on the data science team. You just learned that a junior male hire is making 30% more than you. Recruiters are calling on you every week. But you like your job a lot. You don't want to leave. So, role A, you're going to ask for a raise. Role B, the big boss. You are the head of data science in a startup. Your best performer has left for a competitor. You hired a junior person to replace him. The startup is fundraising and pressure is very high. The budget is tight right now. And your most senior team member, lovely lady, asks to see you. You are going to say no. All right, now I let you to negotiate for 3 minutes. You can do it in French, if both of you French, obviously. And then we are going to debrief. Ready, steady, go. Hello? 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 Thank you very much for thank you very much for being such a good sport. Did you enjoy it? No. Great. So, did anyone reach an agreement? Oh, great. You're going to have a... Please, that's for you. for your pair. So, okay, two people are going to get stickers. For the rest of you, please, I'll give you 1 more minute to debrief. You should tell your counterpart, both of you, what they did well. You can say, okay, you presented really excellent arguments, or you were really calm, or you're really persuasive, and what they could improve, like you were a bit nervous, or maybe you were a bit unsure of themselves. So 1 minute, please do to the very fast debrief 2 things for each other. Thank you. Let's go. All right. Thank you very much once again for playing this game. So with practice, it will get much better. And as I said, practice is a key to success. So we prepared, we practiced. Now the third principle, politely persevere. And I'm going to explain this principle using as example 3 horror scenarios that we are all afraid of. Scenario number 1, you're talking to a recruiter or you are talking to your boss. What if they ask me to name the number first? Like the worst scenario when you're looking for a job. There are 2 schools of thought about whether you should or should not give the first number. And on a list of resources, there are all kinds of articles, and I recommend you reading both school of thoughts and figuring out whatever resonate with you. But whatever you do, don't just give a number. Always give the range. Always give exact number. So it's better to say 53 to 57 rather than 55. And try to be a bit descriptive. So someone asks you, so what is your salary ambitions for this job? And you can say, in top companies like Algolio and Criteo, people in these positions are making between 75 and 81,000. So that's a good answer. Whether you have to name the number first or not, always give a range and rather precise range. And you, of course, by then you already know how much people are making in those top companies. Okay, that's horror scenario number 1, but be polite and persevering. Don't say, I'm not going to tell it to you. In fact, now it's becoming illegal to ask for salary history, but some people are still doing it. So, but you have a way of answering. And on the list of resources, there is an excellent article by Aline Lerner, who is a technical recruiter in the US, who works specifically with engineers, and the article is entitled What to Say When a Recruiter Asks You to Give the Number. So read it, and she has excellent answers as well. Okay, horror scenario number 2. What if they say salary is not negotiable? So your first reflex would be to ask open-ended questions. Help me to understand, what do you mean by not negotiable? You really want to figure out whether it's really non-negotiable or it's just a way of saying. Quite often it's just a way of saying. So try to figure out, what do you mean by that? What does it make non-negotiable? Let's suppose, however, that it's really non-negotiable, like it's some kind of antiquated public institution, they have salary grids, that's the way they operate. Or it's a small startup, they're strapped for cash, they cannot offer you more money. So try to negotiate things which is not salary, which can be monetary or not. It can be, transport, insurance, training budget, but also all kind of things that would make sense for you, would have high value for you and easy to do for them. And I wrote a list of things that would make sense for me, like, additional holidays or flexible working hour. You have a dog, you want to arrive, you need to walk with the dog in the morning, so you want to arrive at 10 and leave at 7. Or you have a child, you want to arrive at 7 and leave at 3. That makes enormous sense for you. For them, it's the same. So try to make a long list of things that would make sense for you and negotiate in lieu of salary. And now we're going to do our last activity. So you're going back to your negotiating partner and together think of a list of at least 15 things that you can negotiate creatively. Together, 15 things for 1 minute. Please, ready, steady, go. Sure, you can get inspired. Okay? Hello? Hello? So, who has 15? More? More than 15? 17? Give me some numbers. 20? 30? 35? Just 5. 5 is already a good beginning. More than 5? 6. Excellent. 10. 10, great. 11, 12. 11 is our friend, so that's for you. Right, but so you see, you can brainstorm quite a lot of things, and they're probably not going to give you everything, but be creative. And I said, high value for you, easy to do for them. Okay, we're approaching the end of our workshop. And I'm explaining the third horror scenario and how you can politely persevere. It concerns more people who are negotiating a new job offer. And what if they withdraw my offer for negotiating? In practice, it happens extremely rare, because for a company it doesn't make sense. They have a candidate, they made an offer to a candidate, they spent tens of thousands of euros for recruiting, and imagine how much time they spend for every single process. So they are not going to withdraw their offer for you negotiating. They might, as I said, not give you everything. You will have to negotiate for more. There will be some kind of tango before you sign. But normally, a company will not withdraw the offer. However, there are horror scenarios, and there are known cases when it happens. For me, it's like a no-go. It's a huge red flag. You do not want to work for a company which penalizes people for negotiating. You just do not work. It's a toxic environment. So, and that sort of goes back to what I said at the beginning of my presentation, what to do if a company considers women negatively who negotiate. Well, it's a huge red flag. Think whether it's a good place for you. And now a summary of what we learned today. We should treat any negotiation as a conversation, as a collaboration, not confrontation. We should rely on our own strengths. If we are shy, reserved, if we are good listeners, if we are analytical, we should use these strengths to negotiate on our behalf. We should remember 3 principles: prepare, practice, and politely persevere. We should always ask open-ended questions: who, when, how. Please let me help me to explain. We should be creative when, you know, we are brainstorming what else we can negotiate. And we all should watch out for red flags, because, you know, it's a two-way process. As I said, the slides are going to be available on the Meetup page with all the links to resources. Now, when you know where to go, where to find information. I just published an article on Medium, which has also has direct links to all kind of resources which you can use. And I would like to finish with words of wisdom by Chris Voss, whom I already mentioned. He spent his career in the FBI, and he was FBI leading international kidnapping negotiator. So when there were terrorists kidnapping American citizens, he was sent there to negotiating with the devil. And when he retired, he became a negotiating consultant. And if you ever want to read a book, this is the book I probably recommend. But he has a blog, The Edge, which is also fascinating. So start with the blog. And you know, this is a guy who you would say he's rather macho. His career was in high risk, high stake, aggressive environments. So not someone whom you would sort of think that he's a feminist, and yet, once he was asked at an interview what he would recommend to a woman who realizes she's paid less by her employer. And he said something like that: if I were your father, I don't want you to work here. Just get out. The fact that the company pays women less, it means a bad strategy, it's a toxic work environment, it's a dead-end job, it's a bad strategy, go someplace else.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed everything. And because tonight is a special night, well, full house, we're going to take a selfie with all of you. So if you can do like your pretty face, we're going to take a picture. Chiara, I don't know where you are. Can you come? Okay. And then we can drink and have fun.